Hey, everybody. Welcome to what I'm considering a pilot for a series known as the Movie Morgue. My name's Tim Turner. I used to host a public access series for about 2.5 years locally here in Northern California. And one of the things that I have always been extremely enthusiastic about is the art form that is the horror film. I've always been one who's felt that the 1980s in particular kind of bastardized the form by dumbing it down into the slasher genre. Are there great slasher films? Of course. There's always going to be in almost any genre you find, there's going to be standouts. But as a general rule, the 80s into the early 90s almost killed the horror film. And if you go back and you look at what was going on in the mid 90s, horror was almost dead as a genre. And it wasn't until Wes Craven's Scream came out and revitalized it. I mean, I don't, man, I'm trying to think. I think that might have been the first horror film to hit $100 million at the box office. Anyway, I'm trying to focus my show that I want to do pretty much anything pre-Friday the 13th, pre-franchise horror. And, yes, you could consider, say, the Frankenstein or Dracula series from Hammer in the 60s. You can consider that franchise, I suppose. Same thing with, like, the Universal horror series. But what I'm referring to is the Friday the 13th, the Halloween, the Nightmare on Elm Street, et cetera, et cetera. All of those series, those franchises that I named, have some redeeming qualities. Although I know this will probably piss some people off, but honestly, I really don't care. Friday the 13th is garbage. Friday the 13th is assembly line garbage. There's never character development of any kind. It's faceless teens getting murdered in creative ways by Jason. At least the Halloween franchise had a couple of decent entries. Same thing with Nightmare on Elm Street. And, at least Nightmare on Elm Street, you'd have different creative ideas with the dreamscapes. Although, ironically, the dreamscapes always seem to end up in that damn basement with the furnace. But anyway, for me, the purpose of this series is to enlighten people to what horror has to offer instead of just slasher films. And I will be talking about some pretty violent films, most notably the Italian Giallo, which was most popular in the early 70s, which was the precursor to the slasher genre. The biggest difference between the Giallo and the slasher genre of the 1980s in America is that there was character development, and it was almost always a whodunit, and the killer was always someone human. Off the top of my head, I think I can only think of one that had a supernatural backdrop to it or solution, and that was the killer reserved 9 seats, which is a pretty obscure Giallo where the killer was actually an evil spirit that was possessing people and killing people. But as a general rule, it was usually a human killer, and they were, dead by the end of the film, and there you go. But just to give you an idea of my background, where I'm coming from, I grew up watching horror movies from a very young age and reading pretty much any book that I could get on the subject. Just to give you an idea of the range of stuff that I've read, I just grabbed a couple randomly off my shelf. There's Caligari's Children, the film of this Tale of Terror, which obviously goes all the way back into the silent era. This is a book, the latest book in an entry in the series called Forgotten Horrors, which if you really like, B movie stuff, these guys, Michael Price, he's co-written a lot of these with some other people. like George Turner, he collaborated on the first book with. But this series is really an invaluable resource. This is a great one that came out, I think about 5 years ago, called 60s Shockers. And it's basically about horror films in the 1960s. Big, heavy book. Lots of great info in it. And this is a brand new one that just came out. I just got the second volume. It's called So Deadly, So Perverse, Volume 2. And it is covering the final half of the 50 years of Italian Giallo films. By the way, these books that I picked out, they're all really well written, well done, a very interesting approach to the subject matter, and very readable. And if you want an idea of what I consider great, when I say great, I mean entertaining to me, horror films, obviously, and here's the Blu-ray set for the Universal Classic Monsters. Really a beautiful set. All those, Universal horror films really beautifully restored. And I really hope that Universal starts putting out some of their other horror stuff that wasn't franchise related, because this is mostly their series, films. The Awful Dr. Orloff, one of the few Jess Franco films that's actually got an artistic bent to it. This beautifully restored Blood and Black Lace, directed by Mario Bava. Arrow, this company right here, Arrow, they are a European company, and they put a lot of these horror films out. Blood and Black Lace is an absolute masterpiece. If you want to see just one of the most beautiful films that's just happens to be horror, you have to see this. Absolutely brilliant film. Dario Argento's Deep Red, another masterpiece. Many consider this to be the ultimate Giallo film. Horror Express, which this film used to only exist in really terrible public domain copies. I love it. This is another really beautifully restored film. Christopher Lee, Peter Cushing, and a great cameo, extended cameo by Telly Savalas. Where can you go wrong with that? Brilliant film. Looks great. This is another one from Arrow that just came out. This is another one of the more preeminent films in the Giallo subgenre, and that's What Have You Done to Solange? Again, this is one that I saw before in an absolutely battered, faded copy, and seeing this is a total revelation because it looks amazing. It's just it shows what can be done when people really care about a product, about a film. Bela Lugosi's White Zombie, independently made in I believe 1932. Lugosi got paid very, very little for it. It's funny, being an independent film, you wouldn't know it because the sets in it are spectacular and really beautiful backdrops that is done for this in a really great zombie makeup for the time. First zombie movie ever made, by the way. And my all-time favorite horror film, Suspiria. You're probably wondering why I don't have a Blu-ray, because I'm still waiting. They're coming out with a fully restored 4K restoration of Suspiria. If you haven't seen this movie, you're missing out. You really need to see this film. It is one of the most personal, wholly original films that you're ever going to see. The fact that somebody wants to remake this thing, they need to be smacked upside the head, because it's too unique. It's like trying to remake Blue Velvet. You're just not going to do it. It's too personal a film. And this is a set that I got on Amazon. Again, I'd like to have Blu-ray, but you take what you get. What's available. I bought this sight unseen. I never seen any of these films, and I absolutely love this set. And it's the Blind Dead collection. It's in a nice coffin-shaped box, as you can see here. It's got all 4 films: Tombs of the Blind Dead, Return of the Evil Dead, The Ghost Galleon, and Night of the Seagulls. And you open it up, and boom, there you go. And it's also got a documentary about Armando de Osorio, the director of all 4 films. And that's just to give you an idea of where I'm coming from. I mean, I could have brought out some of my my Val Lewton sets, because those are a lot of fun. Curse of the Demon, directed by Jacques Tourneur. There's so many great ones that are out there, whether it's a silent era film like The Cat and the Canary or Seven Footprints to Satan. Any of the 30s output, like I said, there's all those Universal ones, but then there's other ones like Island of Lost Souls from Paramount, Murder by the Clock, which is also from Paramount. So there's so much out there to choose from. I mean, you had in the 50s, you had the atomic scare films, so you had lots of giant monsters or giant people or giant whatever. Those were a lot of fun. Not exactly my cup of tea, but a lot, there is fun to be had from them. And of course, from Japan, that's where you got all your giant monster movies with your Godzilla and Gamera and Mothra and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Again, not really what I'm into. I'm not really into the giant monsters thing. It doesn't mean I won't talk about it. If everybody wants to talk about it, I will talk about them because I do know about them. Just not my personal favorite kind of thing. I am a big fan of the Italian Gothics of the 1960s, whether it was a Mario Bava, Antonio Margheriti, or a Riccardo Freda, or any of those directors from that time period. A lot of great stuff came out then, and then you get into the 70s with Dario Argento and Sergio Martino, and there's a lot of great directors in Italy that came out during that period of time. I mentioned Jess Franco earlier. He did a couple of films. The only ones of his that I really care for are his black and white films that he did, whether it's Awful Dr. Orloff or The Sadistic Baron von Klaus or The Diabolical Dr. Z. Everything's a something Dr. something, I noticed. Those are decent, because it feels like he put in some effort, whereas most of his later stuff, it really feels like he's just trying to get as many shots in the can in a day as he can without doing any setups or even trying to solicit remotely a decent performance from any of the actors. There's a film that he did in the 70s that was an attempt at a giallo called Night of the Skull, also known as Night of the Assassins. That's one that's actually not bad. That's not bad. And also Bloody Moon that I got on Blu-ray. That was an 80s film of his. That's not bad either. But as a general rule, anytime somebody praises Jess Franco to me, I kind of have to look askance at them, because frankly, most of his films are garbage. But at least there's some of them that are fun garbage. So anyway, what I hope to do in the future is be able to have discussions with those of you who want to talk about these great old films, whether it's about the content of the films themselves or the actors or the directors, whatever suits you, whatever's fun for you. And I'm always going to probably pull out some video pics that I think are great and fun to watch. And, if I go to see a horror film recently, I will probably talk about that. I recently just saw The Witch, a very different kind of horror film than I think today's audiences are used to. I think today's audiences are very much more into, unfortunately, the jump scare, which to me is the absolutely cheapest form of horror that you can have. Anybody can come up behind you and tap you on the shoulder and scare the crap out of you. It doesn't require any artistry or skill as a director. It's cheap. Well, the film The Witch is completely different. It stands out from pretty much anything that you may have seen in the last decade, except for maybe It Follows or We Are Still Here, two of the better horror films of the last couple of years. It's more of a character study and a psychological story, where it follows this family that's been banished from a colony back in the 1600s, and they're Puritans. They go basically they're kicked out because they they think that the colony isn't religious enough, which if you know Puritans, that's kind of an odd thing to say, but that's where they're coming from. They're a very righteous family, very, very pious, and they leave and the settlement and venture out and build their own little farm, but their fears get the better of them when the youngest baby is stolen. It disappears right under the eyes of the oldest daughter, and from then on, the family begins to disintegrate as finger pointing starts with the accusations of witchcraft, et cetera, et cetera. And it's really, is it fast paced? I will tell you, no, it's not fast paced. So don't go into this expecting a roller coaster ride, because that's not what you're going to get. What you're going to get is some brilliant acting by this family, in particular the two oldest children. There's so many times, and all you need to do is just watch your average sitcom or soap opera or something on TV to see just how bad there are of child actors out there. The two oldest children in this film are absolutely amazing. In particular, the oldest boy, I believe his character's name is Jacob. The scene where he thinks that he's seeing God and speaking to God is one of the best scenes, just, self-contained scenes of acting by a child actor that I've ever seen. He is absolutely amazing to watch in that scene. You will be riveted. You will not be getting up to go use the bathroom or get some popcorn or whatever, because this kid will get you in the palm of his hand and absolutely force you to watch what he's doing. He's just amazing. And the eldest daughter is really wonderful as well. The whole cast is really good, and it's a very small cast. It's only about like 7 people total in this film that you see for any length of time. I enjoyed the film. I don't think it's for everyone. It's much more of an attempt to cross art house with horror, and there's nothing wrong with that. I actually kind of prefer a little bit of poetic class to my horror films. It's not a necessity, but it is kind of nice to see when somebody tries to bring some art to horror, because horror has gotten such a bad rap, especially in the last 30 years in particular, because of the fact that it's such an easy genre to break into for young directors. So it's so much easier to just shoot a film with somebody with a butcher knife hacking people up for 90 minutes. Doesn't cost much. Why put a lot of effort into it when you just get a camera, set it up, stab somebody, next scene, go. But this film, I think this is going to be on my 10 best list of the year, because it is original. It really will shake you. I read a review that was on I saw it was on the poster that said it feels like something personal that we shouldn't be seeing, and that's a really good example of a good way of putting it, because it does feel, there's scenes in this that are extremely uncomfortable to watch, not because they're bad, but because they're done in such a way that will just really resonate with you in a way that makes you very uncomfortable. But anyway, so what I want to do in the future here is I'm going to try doing this on a weekly basis, and hopefully we'll be able to have some fun with it and build a viewership with it. Just in case you were wondering again what my favorite horror film is, it is Suspiria. I actually have 3 Suspiria shirts. Yeah, so thanks for joining me for this brief little pilot and letting me introduce myself to everybody. I also happen to be a co-host of another show on YouTube called The Untitled Show about nerdy stuff with my co-host Michael J. Crawford. That's every Wednesday night at 6:30 Pacific time, 9:30 Eastern. If you like movies, TV, comic books, anything that is nerd related, we discuss that every Wednesday night. It's a lot of fun. I really hope you'll join us for that. This is my own little side project because I know Michael gets tired of me talking about horror all the time. But anyway, I hope you'll join me, and thanks for being with me, and I will hopefully see you next week once I'm able to set up a time when I'd like this to air. So I'll always be able to be here on time and be here for you guys. So thanks for watching, and I will see you next week.